Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This amendment simply exempts hospital districts from the 6% rollback rate. Hospital districts' ad valorem revenues are a critical part of Texas healthcare services and Medicaid financing. Local property tax revenue constitutes the majority of state healthcare funding, referred to as intergovernmental transfers, or IGT, that collectively directly funds over 26% of Medicaid hospital payments to all Texas hospitals. Obviously, the remainder is from GR and federal funding. IGTs, when matched with federal funding, support 62% of the total Medicaid hospital payments. IGT represents a larger share of Medicaid hospital funding in Texas than general state revenue. These local tax dollars provide the bulk of funding for Texas' successful 1115 waiver program, and they help offset GR costs in Medicaid and help offset some of the losses from low Medicaid rates. The current changes in SB 1 to hospital district property tax revenue would add pressure and risk for these systems that now provide support statewide for all Texas Medicaid hospitals, including rural hospitals and critical essential health services such as trauma and GME support. Healthcare financing, in particular for Medicaid, is uncertain at the national level and the state level. The outcome of ongoing critical financing through the waiver is still unknown, and it is important that we not add to the uncertainty of our healthcare financing. This amendment would ensure that hospital districts, which depend on ad valorem revenues, are able to continue the services they provide for all of us in our communities across Texas. I move adoption.
Representative Alvarado for
Mr. Speaker, would the gentlelady yield for some questions?
Representative Davis, you yield for question.
Absolutely. I'd love to yield for my fellow caucus member.
Thank you, Chairwoman Davis. So Harris County is unique in that it has a flood control district, it has a hospital district, and having a one-size-fits-all approach to this hurts a county like Harris because we're unique and with those two entities. So picking up on the hospital district, why should our hospital district or any hospital district be exempt from the rollback?
Well, like I hinted, I guess, or suggested in the opening, the hospital district property taxes are just absolutely critical to our Texas healthcare and our Medicaid financing systems. Local public funding, primarily from ad valorem revenue and the federal match, is 62% of the Medicaid funding going to Texas hospitals, and that's not just for hospitals that have a hospital district. So if that local funding is reduced, we will either be forced to reduce healthcare services to Texans or find more general revenue from the state to make up for the loss of local support.
And would you say that our hospital district can afford at this time to reduce services?
Oh, absolutely not. And in fact, if a 6% rollback rate was effective this year, those of you from Dallas, Parkland Hospital, for example, would lose $19.9 million.
Mr. Speaker.
Ms. Gonzalez, for what purpose?
Does the gentlelady yield?
Absolutely.
Lady yields.
Thank you, Chairwoman Davis, for your leadership in this area. You and Chairwoman Alvarado talked about Houston and Harris County, but this is not just a Harris County issue, correct?
That is correct. It affects Bexar, Dallas, El Paso, Travis, and Tarrant County.
And even in some ways, it affects rural Texas, correct?
Yes, and it will absolutely affect, because that funding, even though it may be provided locally by those areas, is distributed to all of our hospitals. And so a lot of that funding is crucial, especially to our rural hospitals and to our trauma hospitals. And it makes up a valuable part of our GME, which everyone in this body should agree that we really are running out of doctors, and we don't have the best plan forward. So we need to make sure we capture all the GME that we can.
I'm glad you brought up graduate medical education. We have on the House floor for the last 2 sessions worked to increase graduate medical education opportunities. And this amendment works to guarantee that we are keeping in place the GME opportunities we've created, which has been a struggle, correct?
Correct.
And so your amendment we've said we need more doctors, we need to educate more people here in Texas. Your amendment is making sure we keep that specifically for those of us who are part of the rural caucus, making sure that we have doctors for rural Texas.
That's correct. It's just very important for the body to understand the way our Medicaid finance system works, which is we use local dollars that then get matched federally. Those local dollars are what I said, IGT, and they pull down with the local tax and the pulling down of the federal dollars, that constitutes more of your Medicaid financing than what we as a legislature appropriate in our Appropriations Act. So obviously I'm very passionate and care about health care, but I think we could have some very unintended consequences for our hospital districts if we do not exempt them from this bill.
I appreciate your leadership on this. I agree with you, the unintended consequences of hospital districts. Thank you for your amendment.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Giddings, for what purpose?
will the lady...
Yes.
Representative Davis, lady yields.
Thank you very much. You mentioned Parkland Hospital, Representative Davis, and the hospital district is very, very important, not just for the city of Dallas, but for much of North Texas. Are you aware that in many cases at Parkland Hospital, we're taking care of a lot of patients who are from outside of Dallas County?
That's absolutely correct. And you will see the same thing within Harris County, that we are taking care of folks from like 8 surrounding counties. That's why this is really not specific just if you have a hospital district. It is if you represent people that will need to ever go to a hospital.
Because in the final analysis, those hospital districts really affect the quality of health care in entire regions.
That's correct. And the hospital districts are created by, the legislature, but then voted on by the voters. So these are districts that have been approved by the voters in that district.
Absolutely. I think you have a great amendment.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker,
Dr. Sheffield, for what purpose?
would the lady yield for one question?
Representative Davis, you.
Yes, of
Lady
course.
yields.
Chairwoman Davis, I haven't heard anybody ask you about how the rollback would affect our 1115 waiver, which is something everybody really likes, but explain the rollback impact on 1115 waiver.
Well, I briefly mentioned that, and if you want to, since you're a physician, if you'd like to...
Well, the rollback, our 1115 waiver, a lot of that is put out by a lot of our big 6 hospitals.
That's right.
They are public.
They're public
taxing
hospitals,
district
and
hospitals.
it's that local funding that is used to draw down the federal dollars.
And I believe that puts up about 60% of our state's funding from
That
those
is
6.
correct.
And they pull down, at least 40% of disrep.
I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I would assume you are correct.
Okay. I appreciate your amendment.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Speaker.
Move adoption.